the Cultural Advocacy Lab, and together with RIWAQ, we're delighted to bring to you this very important conversation today on Palestine's cultural heritage. A huge thanks to Nayador, firstly, for agreeing to be our media partner, and thank you very much to all our viewers for joining today. Over the past few months, people across the world, including in Pakistan, have very closely followed the events taking place in Palestine, particularly the forced occupation of Palestinian homes in Sheikh Jarrah by Israelis, and the devastation that took place in Gaza under attack that followed. As we saw these events unfold, I'm sure many of us felt the need to learn more about the Palestinian cause and particularly about Palestinian heritage and how it is affected by these events. We at Cultural Advocacy Lab decided to take this opportunity to bring to you the voices directly from Palestine to our screens. And so we work together with Ravak, which is our Ramallah-based nonprofit working on preserving Palestinian heritage, to bring to you this event where we will hear about the work of Ravak and how it serves as a form of cultural resistance. We will then hear from Muniza Hashmi, daughter of renowned Pakistani poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz, as she walks us through her spiritual journey to Palestine, revisiting Faiz's support for the liberation of Palestine. A very quick introduction, firstly, of RIWAQ. So in 1991, a group of enthusiasts came together in an organized effort to save historic buildings in Palestine. RIWAQ's mission is to protect, restore, and rehabilitate the architectural and cultural heritage in Palestine through its programs, and also contribute to the production and dissemination of knowledge about heritage through its research and publications program. And it works in collaboration with other actors on building a conducive institutional and legal environment for doing so. Representing RIWAQ today is Shadda Safi. So Shadda is an architect currently working as the director of RIWAQ. She's academically trained in architectural engineering and the World Heritage and Cultural Projects for Development. She has been leading and working in different projects, including the rehabilitation project of Beit Iqsa, Hajjah, Birzeit, and Colombia. She is interested in cultural landscape and community involvement. Then, of course, we'll hear from Mrs. Muniza Hashmi. She has worn several prominent and professional hats, and in many instances, she's been breaking the glass ceiling for women in Pakistan. She's worked with PDV since 1974, and she was appointed general manager from 1988 to 2003. In addition to introducing dedicated programming for gender empowerment and human rights promotion through Khawateen Time, she has been an international master trainer on gender in media, and she's led several gender-related international development projects. She's received the President of Pakistan's Pride of Performance Award in 2002 for contribution in portrayal of women in electronic media of Pakistan. Currently, she is the creative and media head of Kashf Foundation and the chairperson, board of governors of Lahore Arts Council. In addition to all of these accomplishments, she is also trustee of the Faiz Foundation Trust, working to spread her father, Faiz Ahmed Faiz's message as his legacy. Lastly, we have Huiba Omari, who joined RIWAQ in 2019 as a development officer. Hiba is interested in heritage and cultural productions in Palestine and their relations to political and social transformations. Thank you so much to all three of you for joining us today. Shadda, can I begin by asking you to please tell us a bit about RIWAQ's work and all the work that it's been doing for Palestine's heritage?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rida, for this great introduction. And thank you for this also, for giving us the platform. And thanks for everybody who's watching and giving time to listen and to learn more, because this is really important. I would start by thanking our co-organizer, the Cultural Advocacy Lab, my very, very deep, real friend and dear friend, Maria Goldra's. She's behind the scenes and behind all the network and all the threads that have been waved throughout this event. and of course to you, Rida, and to our amazing Miss Moniza Hashmi for being here and sharing her spiritual journey. And of course to our media partner, Niador, for giving us the platform and for making it easier for us to raise our voices and reach out towards audiences. Allow me to start by emphasizing the rights of my people, of Palestinians, the right of every Palestinian to live on their own land with dignity and freedom. The past months, as Rida said, as you all witnessed, watched, were very heavy on the Palestinians, but so have been the past 73 years of Israeli occupation, ethnic cleansing, and crimes on the land. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I'll share my screen. So my presentation today will be in two parts. And I hope you're seeing my screen, right? Before I start. Do you see it? Okay. So my presentation will be divided into two parts. The first part, as I'm a positive person and I live with hope, will be the bright side of sharing RIWAQ's story and the cultural heritage organization's work in Palestine as a way of resistance, but also as a window of hope. And the second part will focus more on challenges and violations on heritage sites in Palestine. So RIWAQ's journey started, as Rida mentioned, in 1991 with the aim of protecting and preserving cultural heritage in Palestine, with more focus on the rural, because the rural is neglected, it's not well preserved, and it's on the other side, it's very rich of crafts, of productions, of agriculture. So our founder, Suad Al-Amiri, she's a well-known Palestinian architect and writer. And I also encourage you to read some of her books. One of the famous books for her is Sharon and My Mother-in-Law. And she has many other books. As she talks about Palestinian daily life and their struggle with the occupation and the multi-layers of occupation within the daily life of an ordinary Palestinian, and a sarcastic way that everyone can relate to. Suad also taught us to be rebellion, to build on what we believe. And this also started the whole conversation about this event with me studying with Maria. A few years ago back in Italy, we shared space and we were together. And then I was really privileged to be part of the Faiz Ahmed Faiz Festival in Lahore. And I visited Pakistan, one of my amazing experiences. And I felt this sort of emotional relationship between Pakistanis and Palestinians. And it really shed light on how we relate as humans to struggles. And it's really important now, especially now, to raise more awareness and for people not only to be emotionally engaged with struggles, but also aware of the facts and the history and the narratives of the people under struggle. So this is RIWAQ's team. We're architects, civil engineers, community mobilizers. So RIWAQ's journey started in the documentation, because we didn't have any sort of documentation for our cultural heritage. So between 2016 and 1994 and 2004, RIWAQ worked on the National Registry. We registered over 50,320 buildings in more than 422 villages, towns, and cities. And the data is available online. So each and every single historic building in West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, is recorded and documented. And throughout our documentation and work, we're really aware of what's behind the stones So we're aware of oral history and the history and narratives of people that used to live in those traditional and historic spaces, because this is what means a lot for us. It's beyond the physical structures. It's more about the social and economic and traditional practices that people used to share and have. And it's part also of their history. So throughout our work and documentation, we look at the ornaments, we look at the elements and the story behind them. Who were the craftsmen? Why did they do it that way? Is it related to other sort of regional relationship? So, for example, these doorknobs, the traditional doorknobs, each and every doorknob is different than the other, and each tells a different story of humans' taste and the relationship, their status, their economy. So the heritage that we're talking about is usually, as we see it, neglected, abandoned, and there's lots of pressure towards more urban development. There's more pressure on it also from the Israeli policies and regimes towards the destruction of cultural heritage. So RIWAQ started also with working by creating examples on the ground. So we started with, we worked for more than 25 years on the program of job creation through conservation. And it aims to create alternative cultural infrastructure in the rural by preserving and restoring historic buildings to serve as community hubs. So this is an example of a building that we restored in Sebastian. The building, the picture on the right, to my right, shows the building before renovation. And after renovation, it's vivid, it's serving as a community center that women are empowered and work with. This is another building in Jama'in area near Nablus. It's also part of the Throne villages. And this is before renovation. And after renovation, it turned into a community center. So the Women Association has the floor level. Then there's also the youth organization, and the community of the village have their weddings and funerals and events within the open spaces. This is a neighborhood in Asira al-Shamaliya in Nablus area. So this is before renovation. It's clearly not a safe place for people to use or to live within. So after renovation, creating this sort of shared infrastructure that people can spend safely for families and women to spend their daily lives in is really important for social cohesion and for supporting the resistance of such communities. This is a building in Tulkarem. We also have a special focus on women because we believe in women's right to have safe spaces, to produce, to create. So this is a women association in Tulkarem, and after renovation, we removed the additional part, the concrete part that was added on a later stage, and we opened up to see the traditional or the historic building. This is in Birzeit. It's called Al-Hawsh Al-Atam, and it used to be totally abandoned for maybe 40 or 30 years. And after renovation, it became space for residencies. And now we're also doing a project with Siraj Libraries for alternative education within this space. So they'll be operating there. And this is RIWAQ's residency space in Birzeit. And now we're having another one in Qalandia, where we host artists, architects, researchers to come spend time in Palestine and learn more and create. This is part of our projects in Gaza. Geographically, because of the limitation of access, We are not allowed to work in what we call the 48 lands, or the lands that are today under the full Israeli control. So we work within the areas of the West Bank and Gaza and the rural Jerusalem. But in terms of documentation and research, we expand our work towards more the 48 lands, towards the historic Palestine. And we try also to collaborate with initiatives that work in Nazareth, for example, in Jerusalem, the city, etc. So this is in Gaza, a very dear project to ourselves, where it was turned into a library. And thank God it stayed after the last attacks, and we were really concerned what happened to also to the restored infrastructure. Not only because it's essential to have safe spaces for people and not have the demolition or the attacks, but also because these spaces within the siege on Gaza create the only spaces that people can enter as public spaces or shared spaces within the very limited resources and inaccessibility that Gaza people have. So our projects really intend and manage to create jobs. Because restoration is an intensively, it focuses on creating jobs, and we try also to maintain or reclaim the relationship towards the traditional know-how throughout using the traditional material, locally produced material, environmental material that creates more jobs for, for crafts, for blacksmith, wood, etc. This is part of our trainings for the laborers and for the craftsmen and architects. This is part of the work that we do on the ground with the cultural heritage elements. So on one side, we were working with the documentation, with creating examples. So we managed to restore over 130 historic buildings to serve as community centers. But on the other hand, because of lack of legal protection, because of the Israeli policies, and because of lack of awareness towards cultural heritage, we were losing more and more. People were demolishing historic buildings in order to widen roads, and because it's multi-inheritance, so there has been a problem with maintaining cultural heritage. So RIWAQ decided to go strategically. So going back to the registry, we have the 50,320 buildings. They're not evenly distributed within the 422 villages and towns and cities. So we decided to focus on the most significant 50 historic centers and restore them and rehabilitate them. By doing so, we will be protecting or preserving 50% of cultural heritage in Palestine. So since 2006, we started with Bir Zayed and Aga Khan, that won an Aga Khan Prize. We started on our dream of the 50 Village Project. And within this project, we approach a whole village, not only one building. So we work on a traditional fabric, we have housing, we have preventive conservation, we have cultural institutions. So, and the idea is to bring life back to the historic center. So we start with the preventive conservation that allows us to see and preserve the historic center in general before really intervening on what sort of functions the community would like to use or work within. And this is part of the work that we do. This is in Dahriya. And the idea is to bring more people and more uses and more public spaces and more storytelling, because it's also essential to have this relationship between young generations and their heritage. And also we work on knowledge production. So we have over 20 books written by Palestinian historians, architects. It's not written by neither colonial or Oriental approaches. And this is really important. And apparently, Hiba will tell you more later that these are also available online. So RIWAQ has been working along with other cultural heritage organizations, such as the Hebron Rehabilitation Committee in Hebron, the Welfare Association working in the old cities of Jerusalem and Nablus, and the Center for Cultural Heritage Organization Preservation in Bethlehem, and also Iwan in Gaza. But RIWAQ has, as I said earlier, a special focus on rural. You can't really realize and appreciate the scale and impact of these organizations without understanding the context of which they work within. The Israeli occupation over the years emplaced more land acquisition, confiscation, ethnic cleansing of Palestinian towns, cities, and villages, and created regimes of fragmentation and surveillance and oppression, causing dramatic impacts on life in general and on cultural heritage as well. According to the Palestinian Department of Antiquities, the estimates say that the apartheid wall isolates more than 2,800 archaeological sites from lands controlled by Palestinians. The wall has also destroyed partially or fully approximately 800 archaeological sites. On another hand, a huge number of heritage sites are located in Area C and fully controlled by the Israelis. This fragmentation causes not only the physical rupture of heritage and geography and inaccessibility to the sites, but has dangerous attempts to manipulate the history of the land and its context. So we have violations against cultural heritage in Palestine. There's the land divisions, Area A, Area C, and H1 and H2 in Hebron. There's also heritage destruction, illegal excavations, and heritage looter and confiscations. So I'm going to share some examples. There are numerous violations, and they are all reported. So the first example is the old city of Hebron, Hebron or Al Khalil. Old Town is a World Heritage property that was inscribed on the World Heritage List as an emergency and immediately on the list of World Heritage in danger, after acknowledging that the property is faced with serious threats which could have harmful effects on its characteristics. The Hebron Old City is one of the oldest living cities and spiritual centers in the world. Its numerous ancient, well-preserved monuments and buildings bear witness to its rich past. So there are lots of illegal procedures and violations, starting with that the city is divided into area H1 and H2, which was designed basically to smoothen and secure the pathways of the Israeli settlers living in and above the Palestinian houses. Several checkpoints are there, and I'm sure Ms. Hashmi witnessed this harmful experience within the city of Hebron to make it harder for Palestinians to live and to eventually let them out of the city. There has been also many diggings under the houses, the Palestinian houses, from Israeli settlers protected by the Israeli soldiers. You can see also the inaccessibility and the divisions of the Ibrahim Mosque, which is a real crime and another huge violation. On the bright side, the Hebron Rehabilitation Committee and the municipality have been working together for years and years to restore and give more opportunity for people to have the right to resistance and to bear the hard life under occupation. So another example is Lifta. Lifta is a traditional Palestinian village, and it's the only settlement that was not repopulated or destroyed after the ethnic cleansing and displacement of its residents back in 1947-48. Instead, it survives as a ruin on a steeply sloping site along a road leading to the Jerusalem from the west. So this is some pictures of Lifta, and for years it has been threatened by an Israeli redevelopment plan that would destroy most of the surviving structures and replace them with luxury housing and shops. The main aim was to emphasize the acquisition of Israeli ownership of the place and manipulate its original ownership. So Lifta's people have put together their efforts to form a committee and work within legal and within advocacy attempts to protect their historic center and their village. And it's a real important example of how heritage played a crucial means for community mobilization. So the displaced indigenous Palestinian community of Lifta gathered and put their efforts and wealth and resources to save their heritage. And they started by the documentation of the historic buildings. RIWAQ was part of the documentation process, and they also worked on a publication, and they regularly have hikes and site visits and advocacy plans within the site, but also within the courts, international courts, to protect their village. This is part of Tariq Bakri's work. He's also working on oral history and reconnecting the diaspora of Lifta towards their village. Some of them were not ever able to come back to Palestine, but also to their village. So this is part of the process where he has elderlies coming to the village and showing their original houses. This is a girl from the diaspora who had never been able to see her grandfather's house, crying after, describing the location of her grandfather's house and how it was, and its surrounding details. So, the last case that I'm really showing here today is Jerusalem. In a move never recognized by the international community, Israel annexed the city of Jerusalem in 1980, claiming it as the self-proclaimed Jewish state's eternal and undivided capital. And then Donald Trump announced the United States recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The accessibility towards the historic center and the holy city is totally controlled by the Israelis. Christians and Muslims, like myself, from the West Bank or Gaza and elsewhere, are usually not given permissions to enter the city. You have all seen the brutal attacks on the holy place and within the holiest time of the year during Ramadan and Easter, and the attacks and fires set in the mosque and the prayers and the blockage of them entering the old city and the mosque. Yet the violations, you can see here the images, sorry. Yet the violations against Jerusalem goes way beyond this and way before this period. Israel has been illegally excavating beneath Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in full swing in the past 60 years. However, in the past 15 years, the diggings have gone under the foundations of the compound. And since 1967, Israel has carried out more than 100 excavations under the ancient city and the Silwan area. With several attempts to ethnic cleansing of its indigenous communities, as the one you have seen in Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, and Batn al-Hawa. The depth of the excavations reach over 20 meters underground, causing cracks and instability of the historic structures. Also, there are precautions, or they're also preventing the rehabilitation process and restoration process of the mosque. So I end up my presentation here. So, thank you. And
Thank
I
you.
thank. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Shraddha. I think you need to drink a glass of water. But thank you so much for that presentation and for those very moving images towards the end that really make you realize what the human impact of this conflict is on Palestinians. Mrs. Hashmi, your father's support for the Palestinian cause for freedom is very well known to many. Can I now ask you to share your experience of visiting Palestine, going to Palestine, and also while you revisited his support for the liberation of Palestine, how was that journey?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I don't know who's watching and so on and so forth. Thank you. I mean, Shatha has done all the thank yous, so I'm not going to say them again, but all the thank yous, definitely for me also. And a big thank you to Ravak and Shatha, especially for making my journey possible. All right. Shatha, you have moved me to tears. Simply because I saw all of this with my own eyes. And if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. But what you said in the beginning about your being a person of hope, I think that's exactly what Faiz was all about. So, and it was absolutely heartbreaking what I saw, which I will try and describe. But that's for me, and I must try and control my emotions because Palestine is extremely close to my heart. So, and everybody's heart who has a heart, frankly speaking. So, how did it happen? Well, my relationship, I'm going to try and speed this up a bit. My relationship with Palestine when I was growing up, as it were, or rather even later than that, was because my father in 1978, when he decided to take a self-exile under the military dictatorship of Ziaul Haq, he did go here and there for a while, deciding which place to go to, and then he decided to take up the post in Beirut as the chief editor of the Lotus magazine, which was the magazine that was being managed on behalf of the PLO and Yasser Arafat, and he was asked to go there and so on and so forth. And he stayed there for 2 or 3 years. And of course, then he was subjected, I should say, or tortured. Yes, thank you very much for that picture. And he was a part of that, not part, but he was definitely a part of the suffering of the Intifada at that time. And if you read the book, there is only one authorized book, biography of Faiz Ahmad Faiz, which is called Love and Revolution, written by my son, his grandson. It states very clearly that he was then told to get out of Beirut because he was a marked man because of his PLO connections. And he got out in the boot of a car and he had to escape to Tunisia and so on and so forth, etc. The rest is all history. If you can see him, he's watching from the back right now. And so that was my first connection. And then, of course, Faiz, moved by everything that he saw, he felt, he was a part of, wrote some of his very moving poems about the Palestinian struggles and so on and so forth, which I will then read one at the end of it, which is a trana, as we call it, a rallying cry or something that talks about the emotions of the Palestinian people. So this is how I was introduced to it, and somehow in my heart, somewhere lay this absolute passionate desire to go and visit Palestine, and to, especially as I grew older, to pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, as Pakistanis, I think everybody knows that our passports don't allow it. We recognize all the countries of the world except Israel, and therefore there was no question of my going. And then, as luck would have it, of course, people know that my mother is British, and I chose to get a British passport. I got a British passport, and I thought, oh man, I can go places. And then Shata lands in my life. And it was just one morning at breakfast. She was catching a flight 3 hours or 4 hours later when she was sitting with me at breakfast, because that was the only time I could actually get to see her because she was so busy with the festival, Fairs Festival, and so was I. And I said, Shata, I'm just wanting to go to Palestine. And she looked at me and said, come, I will make the arrangements. And I said, what? Yeah, there's the festival, and there she is all over the world. And I said to myself, I know, young ladies, you are beautiful young ladies, and you are just on the stepping stone of your lives, and I hope that you will have a successful life. But when you get to my age, darlings, you just have to take the opportunity as it comes. And I just feel so, so lucky, fortunate, happy, Maria being a part of this whole thing. And I said, really? And she said, yes. Oh, but that's Israel. What do I do? I can't. And then, of course, this wonderful friend of mine joined me from London. She's another adventurous person like myself, Safina. And somehow, the net appeared. I took the leap and the net appeared. And then Shata and Ravak were the two, how should I say, two people responsible, or two forces responsible for me to make that trip. Before that, can we see the slide before that, please? Yeah. Oh my. When I stepped onto, but I said I'm not going to Tel Aviv. I couldn't go to Tel Aviv because there was no way that I could take a flight to Tel Aviv, because Tel Aviv didn't exist, right, for Pakistan. So we went to Jordan. From Jordan, we crossed over on the Hussein Bridge. And when we were going past this site, this road sign, I said, stop. I got to take a picture. I got to see it. And there it is. It says Jerusalem. And I remember that my driver, who had been sent by Shata, saying, madam, we can't stop. I said, hell, we can't stop. I got to take that picture. So that was it. And then from there, the next slide, please. And from there came that wonderful, wonderful photograph. Can you see? You can see the dome at the back. And that's Safina. God bless her. She was such a support. And when I stood there, it was March 24th. I can remember that. It was a windy, windy day. And I remember standing there and saying, Allah, where do you take me? How do you take me? Really, how do you take me? And then the journey began. Okay. So where were we going to stay? So we went to stay. Can you believe it? Can we have the next slide, please? We were looking for places. And there, of course, is the dome, which is just something close to my heart. And then we decided that we would go to, next slide, please. We would go to look for a place to go. And then we wanted to stay in Jerusalem, and so on and so forth. Now, this is the Indian Hospice. It's a very reasonable place in Jerusalem. And the wonderful thing about it is, can we have the next slide, please? And the wonderful thing is that Baba Farid Shakarganj stayed there 40 days. Chilla kata unhone. He spent 40 days there. And I couldn't believe that my room was next to Baba Farid Ganj. And I just prayed there and I said, this has to be a sign. This has to be a sign. It is a beautiful, beautiful courtyard and small place and very reasonably priced, and a walking distance from Al-Aqsa. So, next please. So there we were, and off we went we were shaking from exhaustion that day, all night travel. And I said, we are going now. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is the Miraj. That is where the Miraj took place from. Next, please. And we go in, and this is keep changing them, please. We go into the mosque inside. Next one. And beautiful people praying and so on and so forth. I mean, I could not imagine that I was standing in this place. And I would like to say, and next, please. And I would like to say something to you. And that is under the mount, where we know that the Prophet ﷺ prayed. And we also said our nafils there. This is under the mount. Next, please. And I would like you to seriously believe, I don't know, you have to take my word for it, I promise you. I promise you, I felt him. I felt his presence. When I prayed there, I felt his presence. And I can never forget it. Never. Anyway, and this photograph is the place where he says, light a lamp that you have been to Aqsa. And I immediately sent a message to a friend of mine, Dr. Arfa Saida, God bless her. And she said, can you please go and put some money from me? Because I can never go to Aqsa. So I went and put some money for her, $20, that she immediately returned as soon as I stepped back. Hey, pado. I said, Dr. Sahib, it's okay. No. Mera karz hai. I have to return it. Anyway, next, please. And then, of course, we had to go to the wall. I had to see it. Now, this is not the wall, the Bethlehem wall. This is the other Wailing Wall. And let me tell you something. I was scared because I was surrounded now by obviously practicing Jews, obviously. And Safina and I were being very polite and very humble and very, how should I say, kind of, understanding that this is a special place and so on and so forth. But I mean, the security going inside was tight. And we showed our passports and all of that and so on. So that's a story that I'll tell later, what happened to me at whatever. But we went to see that as well, and we took photographs. And they were putting those pieces of paper inside the wall, those are sort of requests and so on and so forth. And Safina said, shall we do it? I said, no, I just prayed to the Prophet. That's where I put my piece of paper, not here. Anyway, so that's beside the point. Next, please. And then came Hebron. When Shata was talking about Hebron, I think that was the most moving part of my visit. It was moving because I, with my own eyes, and if you're interested, if I have a couple of minutes, I'll explain to you. We were walking down the bazaar, if you want to call it a street, and our guide, who was provided by RIWAQ, said, look up. And I looked up. And I saw a fish net. You know what I mean? A fish net right through the bazaar. And I said, what's that? He said, the settlers are on the left. And when we walk down this street, they throw garbage at us. And either we take the garbage on our heads, or we had to put up this fish net throughout so that we can be protected. And I saw it. I'm not going to describe what I saw. And he said, look to the left. And I looked to the left. And he said, can you see those barbed windows? I said, yes. He says, they're behind there. They're watching you. I mean, it was the most uncanny, frightening feeling that you're walking down and people are watching you and throwing garbage at you. Can you believe it? And it's your home. It's your street. You live here. It was terrible. We walked down there, and then, as Shata mentioned, the Ibrahim Mosque. Change, please. We saw it. I saw, this was the street. This is the street that we were walking down. One more, please. Next one. And there is the mosque. And there is Hazrat Ibrahim, alayhi salam. And there are the people praying. And then she told me the story. The RIWAQ guide told us the story of how the mosque was divided in half and there was a violence. And then the Jews, the settlers, or whatever you want to call them, sorry, I don't want to use that word, but they wanted to come in and, there was a fight and so on and so forth. And the mosque was closed and the mosque was damaged. Can you believe that? The photograph that she showed with boots on and so on and so forth, we saw that as well. And then the door, it was time for them to come in. So the door was closed. So they walked in. I mean, it was just uncanny that we were standing in Hazrat Ibrahim's place of burial, and this is going on. And the most strict security was at the gate before we entered. And RIWAQ, I'm grateful to them, that gentleman very sweetly, he said, their guests and so on and so forth, and passport. And they're behind complete black kind of windows. You can't see the person behind. They can see you. And they say, passport, please. And you bring your passport in. And somebody's looking at you, but you can't see them. I mean, that's uncanny. And anyway, we walked in. So next, please. And then, of course, there was a Maqam Ishaq. That is obviously there. Then there's Maqam Sarah, his wife, Zoj, Ibrahim. That's what we saw. Next, please. And these are all the graves there, which, I mean, you were standing in this holy place, and it was uncanny that you were actually in the presence. That's all I can say. You were in the presence, even though it was hundreds and thousands of years later, but you were in the presence. Next, please. And then and then we went to Bethlehem because I needed to go there. Now, don't forget that I am a product of a Christian school, a mission school, and I had to go to Bethlehem. And I had to see the place where Christ was born, Hazrat Isa, naturally, from our belief as well. And so much has been heard and said about him.
Mrs. Hashmi, you're on mute.
Sorry.
There we are.
Oh, I'm sorry, beg your pardon. And can we change, please? Next one. This was what shattered me in Bethlehem. This is a wall. And this is, and all of this is Banksy, all this huge grotto, this wonderful painting. And I stood looking at it and I said to my Shata's friend, whose name I forget now, I said, what is this? And she said, they've divided the city. I said, why? She said, ask them. And I said, what's behind the wall? She said, we don't know. Can you imagine a wall like that being in the middle of, say, Lahore, where I live? And you don't know what's going on the other side, and they've taken over half the land? I couldn't believe it. I mean, I walked, she said, please don't spend too much time here. So we kind of slightly walked, but it was just uncanny. So there you go. Next, please. And then comes Ramallah. Oh my. One of the basic reasons, friends, for me to visit Palestine was also to go and say goodbye on behalf of my father to this great man. They were friends, as you saw in the first photograph. And he had many meetings with him in Beirut. And we received a beautiful letter of condolence when my dad died from Yasser Arafat. And I have included that in my book, which is coming up in the next 2 or 3 months. So I had to go. And I am so grateful to RIWAQ for being an organizer of this whole thing. And when I stood there and I said my kul and my, what I do say, I could just imagine. I just had to say it on behalf of my dad. So that was closure for me, and I hope closure for him. Anyway, after that, please, next. I hope I'm not taking too much time. And then I was taken. Now, here is where I tie into what we are doing today. I was taken to a beautiful exhibition by RIWAQ of handicrafts. I think they're made by women only. And beautiful, beautiful handicrafts. Keep changing them, please. They were, as you can see them, they're self-explanatory. And it was a huge exhibition of exquisite work by these Palestinian, shall I say, women and artisans of all sorts. And the photographs were there, etc. So the next stop after that was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Haifa. That's it, Haifa. And we went to see this was the Baha'i temple. We stood on the top and you can see that, it was absolutely magnificent, magnificent. The view from here to there. And there's Safina, my travel mate, who looked after me so carefully and so beautifully. Next, please. And then after that, this was another. This is now Jericho. Because of as I said, my Christian, how should I say, Bible studies classes, I wanted to go to Jericho because it has the Mount of Temptation, where Jesus was tempted by Satan to give up his path. And he said no, etc. Well, that rest is history. And it was only 3 years ago when I was looking at myself and I said, lady, you climbed those stairs? I did. I guess that's what happens. It's faith and it's passion. And a part of it, of course, we were taken up and part of it I climbed. The last few 100 yards or something you have to climb. And this is the Mount of Temptation, which is in Jericho, and you climb up to the mount, and that's, you see the place where Satan tempted Jesus Christ, etc. Next one, please. And on the top is a beautiful church, small church, but beautiful church. And I was told that services are still happening there. Not many people come, but we did see a priest going here and there and so on and so forth. And he gave us some time and explained to us and so on and so forth. And Safina, of course, because she was coming from London, does understand. the biblical part of it. So it was interesting for her as well. Change, please. And so this was, it was inside heavy rock. It was heavy rock, and it was really absolutely magnificent. This church, magnificent. But this was the Mount of Temptation in Jericho. Next, please. And then comes, oh my, I think this is Nazareth. Yes, because then we go to Nazareth because I wanted to see where Jesus grew up and whatever, and I think that is the grotto where he was born, and so on and so forth. And it was just magnificent. I mean, this was just so moving to think that you were in a place where these wonderful, these, shall I say, changes of the world came into existence, and so on and so forth. Next, please. And I think we're coming to the end of it. I hope I'm not boring everybody too much. Can we change the slides now? The next one? And the final slide. Yes. Hello, Shada. Oh, this was the most magnificent trip of my life, Shada. My life has changed, and I say so. Even now, as you can see, I get emotional, terribly emotional. And I know that I will never be able to go back. I wish I could. These are one places that I can never go back. I don't think they'll let me in again. There'll be lots of, I can tell you some stories later, what happened to us otherwise, and anecdotes, etc. But that connection that I formed with Palestine, actually with Palestine, the people, the struggle, what is going on, and then what happened recently, it just drove a dagger in my heart because I have seen it. I've seen the army, I've seen the Fauji's marching, and I've seen their eyes, and I've seen their disdain, and I've seen their sort of, who are you? Why are you here? Sort of thing, even, that kind of thing. So, and then this is actually, to be very honest, although, and this is the last couple of sentences, Shata did a wonderful presentation at the Fairs Festival when she came. But because I was running around doing lots of hundreds of other things, I couldn't see them. I just saw what she showed today, and I am amazed at the work that RIWAQ is doing. And I saw RIWAQ's work with my own eyes after that wonderful breakfast that they gave us, that we ate ourselves silly. But after that, they gave a presentation what is going on. RIWAQ is doing amazing work, and I saw it, and I could actually identify with it, sort of, the cultural heritage and so on and so forth, because so much of it needs to be protected from these people who have absolutely no, how should I say, absolutely no sympathy or no connection with it. And one point that I want to raise is because I saw this with my own eyes. We were walking down in Hebron. We were walking down the steps towards the mosque. So our guide was talking to us, and we were walking down or walking towards it, I can't remember. And as we got to the bottom of some place and we were going to turn to go up to the mosque, there was a noise. Or there was loud shouting and something going on at the side. And Safina and I had told ourselves we are not going to talk in Urdu. We are British citizens, so that nobody looks at us and says who we are. And we are not going to act surprised. We are tourists. So, but there was this fuss going on the right side, a lot of fuss. And there were some media people there, and they were shouting, and they were screaming, and I couldn't understand. And I stopped. And I looked at our guide, I can't remember his name, lovely gentleman, and I said, what's happening? And he said, the settlers are moving into a house, and the people in the house are denying it and screaming, and the media is covering. So I actually saw that with my own eyes. The crime, the desperation, the anger of those people who are being, shall I say, evicted. I don't know if the settlers were there or not, because at that time I could, but the media was covering it, but they were army people in uniform. And I said, what do you mean they're moving in? He said, they're moving in. At that time I hadn't quite understood what happens when somebody, and I thought to myself later in my moments of recollection, when I sit down and I see my beautiful house and my lovely children and my grandchildren and everything else, and little pieces of things that I have bought myself and surrounded myself with. And I remember one time I sat down and said, what if somebody walks in and says, get out? What? And not only get out, but get out. And the heartbreak that I saw, that it comes back to me again. I don't know what happened. Then I asked him, and they said they can go to court, but the court will never give it in. They will go to court, they will fight. The court may decide in their favor, but it may take forever, and so on and so forth. But how can you fight the might of tanks and arms and people like that? And we saw them at every corner in Jerusalem, every corner. So I could understand that. My heart broke at that time. But anyway, so that's all I have to say. But I would like to say now, I have the notes that I'm supposed to be talking to you about. A lot of it has gone here and there. Sorry.
Mrs. Hashmi, thank you so much for that.
Fine. Thank you. Carry on.
And for taking us on a virtual visit to Palestine. I know many of us Pakistanis, it is our deepest wish to visit, but just the situation doesn't really allow for it. So thank you for that. It was very moving. At this point, before we move forward, I would just like to request the viewers, if they have any questions for Shata or for, Mrs. Hashmi, please start to send them in, because we will be addressing them later on. But before that, I had some of my own questions. If I could ask, maybe begin by asking Ravak some questions. All of this conversation is again taking me back to what was just happening in what we all saw happen in Gaza. What has the impact of all of that been on the heritage of that specific region, and what role can Ravak play in rebuilding Gaza?
Thank you, Rida. Thank you, Ms. Hashmi, for this emotional, spiritual trip, and for sharing your emotions. This is really, it means a lot when someone really shares their deep emotions. It gets through us. To talk about Gaza, we were also keen on knowing or doing some sort of assessment to what happened to the cultural heritage, because the media and everything is now also, as many others, are more focused on health, on the people who were killed, on the people who lost their houses. And this is very important, but also another time cultural heritage is neglected. It's not being perceived as a priority. So we are trying with our partners in Gaza, with Iwan and with Canaan Initiative, to do some sort of assessment to really see how things are affected. We also are working currently on an initiative to restore historic buildings in Gaza in this very hard times, to give more hope and more premises for people. We are currently working on an initiative to restore Al-Wahidi House, which will serve as a premises for a cultural institution called Basma. They work with kids, and they work on theater and on education, but also on the mental health of children throughout arts. And they lost 2 of the premises during the attacks. They had 2 premises that they totally lost. So this is one initiative. We're also working on another restoration projects within Gaza, in collaboration with our partners.
This is great to know. Thank you, Shata. And as a follow-up question, I was wondering, and this is the situation in most places, I think, cultural institutions are often the ones that are least financed. So in such a situation, how is Ravak managing this challenge and sustaining its work despite the situation in Palestine right now?
I will let Hiba lead out this answer, and if this helps, I might share a screen for Hiba.
Please.
Hi everyone, thank you Rida, thank you Nayadur and Maria for all your support, and Mrs. Hashmi, thank you so much. Your support and your speech really means a lot to us, especially now in these very hard times. And of course, thank you everyone for joining us. There are so many ways to be involved with RIWAQ's work. As you said, Rida, funding nowadays and even before that has been a bit tough on us, but we rely on individuals. We rely mostly, of course, on our donors who support cultural institutions, who support the preservation of cultural heritage. But you, as anyone else, can also be part of this involvement. Our main aim in RIWAQ is also to create a community that consists of culturally conscious individuals, whether in Palestine or worldwide, who want to know more about cultural heritage, who are willing to support in different ways. And we feel like this is an urge, especially now, to rely on individuals who share the same or similar missions as RIWAQ. First of all, we invite you, of course, all to subscribe in our mailing list. In the mailing list, of course, you get to know more about RIWAQ's work and projects and latest news in restoration projects. We also invite you to join our membership program. This membership program is really close to us because it consists of so many committed individuals who are committed to RIWAQ's cause and mission. And of course, these members will get benefits on an annual basis. Another way is to donate through RIWAQ's, to donate through RIWAQ's main projects or program. We have different programs, and each program focuses on one point. For example, we have the Heritage for Women Fund. This fund covers projects that are related to women empowerment initiatives. We restore buildings to be used by women association. And for example, we have the Job Creation Fund. As Shada mentioned, it's one of our main programs because it creates job opportunities for Palestinians in restoration and other fields. And since the beginning of the pandemic last year, especially then, RIWAQ launched digital campaigns because, of course, we had to rely on the digital instead. We launched a campaign to raise funds in support of restoration workers who weren't able to go to heritage sites, and we had to support them. This was our way of helping them, at least during that time. And also last Ramadan, this is a campaign that we're really proud of, to be honest. Last Ramadan, we launched a campaign to restore or to raise funds and restore historic houses inhabited by Palestinian families. These houses were in bad situation and needed our intervention so that the family can have a better life. And with all the donations, with all the incredible generous donors, we were able, now we're going to start with the restoration works, we're able to restore 5 homes this year. As also Shada mentioned, our involvement with Gaza is also very important. What we can do is restoration. So of course, with our partners in Gaza, we have this campaign, which is the Gaza Campaign. We would like to restore a historic building located at the heart of the city in Gaza, and it will be used by Basma Association, which is an association that focuses on arts and culture, especially theater and psychological work with women, with people of disabilities, and with children. So we feel like this is a very important association first to support, and also the building that will be restored has a very significant importance and architectural importance. In addition, you can always, of course, check our website of the books. We have so many publications in the past 20 years that have been written by Palestinian architects and people who are involved. They're mostly Palestinians, so we feel it's also our voices being heard. You can check our website. And of course, all of the links will be put on the page of, on the YouTube and Facebook pages. And finally, of course, you can spread the word about RIWAQ, share with your friends through social media. And yeah, we thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all your support.
Thank you so much for that, Hiba. We have some questions coming in now. Ali Varsi is asking Mrs. Hashmi, What happens if they get to know you're a tourist from Pakistan? Of course, you went with British passports, but why did you still feel threatened?
What happens when they find out? Well, they didn't find out, so that's what I'm going to look at. They didn't find out. My fear, Ali, was throughout that, okay, so they find out that I am a Pakistani, then what happens? But, let me give you just a very small instance of when we were at the immigration desk just to take our trip from Jordan across the bridge, and then now we are stepping into Israel as such, but Palestine, whatever. And we had these two women at the immigration desk, beautiful women, by the way. And Safina was on one side and I was on the other side, and we had said to each other, we will not speak in Urdu, that's right. And we are going to act dumb. So we did. And so this was, and the first question when she opened my passport was, because my exit was from Pakistan, and she said, you've come from Pakistan? I said, Jesus. I said, yes. What do you do there? I said, I work. What do you work at? So I said, I teach, which I do. And why are you here? I'm here for visiting. I'm a tourist. Where do you live? I live in Lahore. They asked the questions. I gave the answers because I have been taught, and, you just never lie to the immigration officer. So I did not lie. There was no lies there, but they were talking to each other. And then they checked Safina, and Safina also had been to Pakistan several times, although she lives in England. So they wanted to know, they wanted to connect. And okay, so they did their homework or whatever they did, and that was the end of it. And then they just said, okay, welcome to Israel. And we just walked through. But I was not being able to breathe, frankly speaking. I was a little scared. But it was just the fact that we were definitely we felt, and this is the last sentence, I felt, let me not talk about Sabina, I felt I was in hostile surroundings. I felt that I was somehow being watched. And I have a feeling that with my Pakistan flag, I had been flagged. And I obviously couldn't see anybody or something, but I was generally feeling uncomfortable. When we crossed over from Bethlehem, we were in Bethlehem, we had to catch the last bus back to Jerusalem. Our lovely guide could not accompany us because, as Shata said, she didn't have the permission. So she said, if I take you on the bus, it has to go through a long route and it'll take too long. So Safina said, let's get home before sundown. I said, fine. So she said, please cross over on the border. It's called the border or whatever it's called, checkpoint. So we said, okay. So we walked down this sort of quiet, cemented alley sort of thing. And we are walking down, there's a light and there are sort of walls on the side. And then suddenly we hear passports. We can't see anybody. We cannot see anybody. And they said, walk forward. We walk forward. And there's a black screen. And they say, slide your passport, please. Slide the passport. Silence, complete silence. Okay, next. Safina slides a passport. Okay, you can go. I mean, it is uncanny. And we walk out of that tunnel, if you want to call it, a pathway, and we are in Jerusalem on the other side. But this is not allowed to the people who live there, but only as tourists. And there's the bus waiting. So these were moments when there was, same as Hebron, when we were entering the mosque. I mean, we go into mosque, right? Mosque is a place where you go to worship, No, same thing, bag. So these are moments of not fear, yes, definitely fear and apprehension. Because sachi baat hai, I mean, let's be very honest, there was a thief, as we say it in Urdu. Mere dil mein chor tha. There was some, I was hiding something, right? So it was not really, so I was kind of a double person there. But I was doing nothing wrong. I was a tourist. I had been allowed entry. I had a passport. I had money. I had so there was nothing wrong. But I was somewhat panicking. So there's no, what would have happened? I'll have to go back and find out. I hope that answers your question, Adi.
Yes, well, hope you're able to visit, but again, without any problems. We have one more question from Maria Gulreis. She's asking, once RIWAQ completes a project, how are they able to keep the community engaged to sustain the work that's been done?
And this is something that we've been working throughout, and thank you, Mario, for raising this, because our work is basically a community-based approach or work. So we start by working closely with the cultural institutions and the community members that will use our projects after, or the buildings after the renovation. And the whole process is very much community oriented. So there's a dialogue on how the functions, the needs, the aspirations of the community is towards the restored buildings. And then the restoration process also includes the community. So we try to also engage them on a technical level to know how to maintain the building, what sort of traditional material are used, the approaches, traditional approaches towards restoration and maintenance. This is on one side. And on the other side, because we work closely with them, there's this sense of transfer of ownership. It's important that the transfer of ownership of the project from our side to the community is realized. To be honest, there are some examples that we really are exploring and trying to find more solutions to more actively renovations or use of the community. So we have also the agreements, and we have follow-up sort of plan with the community. But because all the process is a community-based approach and it's side by side with the community, you find really impressive examples of how community are engaged and using and operating the buildings.
Thank you, Shata. Mrs. Hashmi, I wanted to ask you another question. You spoke at length about Fez's connection to Palestine and his support for the cause, and that's what took you to Palestine as well. We know that his poetry, they were anthems of resistance, and to this date they feature in protests around the world due to the power of his words. And it's very important for us today to prioritize the arts and culture to promote human rights and democratic values. Keeping this in mind, what do you think needs to be done to increase the focus on culture for development and for peace building?
Right. Thank you, Rida. That is an important question. And then when I look at it from the legacy and the vision of Fez, that is an important question to answer as well. Although, unfortunately, of whatever you want to call it, governments, peoples don't really think that all this culture business is really very important. And the fact that, but I would call it almost like a second leg of diplomacy, because these exchanges that we have, when I can only give an example of the Fez festival, these festivals, any kind of festival, I mean, I'm not looking at the conference, well, the conferences, of course, and so on and so forth, but these interactive activities which promote the similarities between cultures and the differences and the diversities, but having these movements, having these get-togethers, having these exchanges, having the ability to be talking about peace. Now, if, for example, if you bring, I mean, Shata is sitting right here, and with Shata we had, if I remember, a wonderful musician from Syria, Nahil al-Halbibi. He was sitting with her, and the conversation that happened at that session was, how do you promote, or how do you even think of being creative when you've got bombs and you've got violence happening all over the place? And I know for a fact that Shata cried. We got her so emotional at that time. So, I mean, the point is that you have to talk that how these interactions, these conversations, these dialogues are important as well towards peace building. Just sharing the fact that you are not alone. The Palestinians are not alone. The Syrians are not alone. The Yemeni are not alone. The Afghanis are not alone. I mean, these are people who are facing constant violence, constant whatever it is you want to call it, and of course people in Africa, etc. So if you have exchanges like this, if you have quiet festivals, quiet sharing of culture, music, just looking at it, that there is another side of beauty, there is an if you are fighting violence, we, the people of culture, cannot fight violence with violence. It's not us. We fight it in the best way we can. Faiz fought it in the best way he could, which was to express his words, through his words. So we have to use culture, we have to use the dynamics of culture, we have to use exchanges of culture to bring people together, to share, and to share, just to know the fact that we are all moving towards peace. We are with you in this movement. We cannot give you bombs, we cannot give you anything like that. We can only give you our love and our affection and our support, and we can only do it through culture, and we can only do it through festivals, we can only do it through songs, we can do it through collaboration, and so on and so forth. So this is, I think, what culture and heritage needs to be exchanged, and to know that we are all on the same side. We're talking together. That's what I think. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Hashmi. We have another question, if you could answer quickly before we end the program. There's a question from Leila Rajani. She's asking, what is the Palestinian government's stance on culture and arts? And to what extent are they active in cultural safeguarding?
Thank you, Leila. This is also another important issue to raise. We, as Palestinians under occupation, and even that we have the Palestinian Authority, there are lots of gaps. The civil society organizations have been trying to fill the gap for years and years, and they are still doing. So the resources and the efforts done by the state and offered by the state is never enough for what is happening on the ground. So to give you just an example, we have been struggling for years and years to have a law to protect cultural heritage. And it was only ratified in 2018 because of the pressure from UNESCO and the international community on Palestine because it became a member state in the United Nations. And they have to, it's like on the checklist, you have to ratify some sort of conventions. This was the only pressure that pushed forward the law. And until today, we're still lacking the bylaws or the law is not put in place. And if it's put in place, there are no resources for restoration or protection. So we're really in lack of protection. On another hand, the work of the civil society organizations is really important, and it's important to recognize their work within their donor community, or the recognition of who's putting efforts or funding our work. So I will take it from Hiba here to I recognize, the Arab Fund for the social and economic and social development that are putting more money into funding for or supporting our projects, the Cultural Protection Fund of the British Council, the Swedish government through UNESCO, also Aleph, KFW, the German and the French consulate and representatives. These efforts mostly are put throughout the work of the civil society to fill the gap of what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. And connected to that, very, very quickly, there's another question. Have you ever faced restrictions from the state in your work? And if so, how do you overcome that?
We have restrictions, not in terms of very direct restrictions in terms of, giving us permissions or non-permissions to work, but it's the efforts towards work that we can do more if we have the state on our side, if we have the local resources put into our side. So we could have done lots of work in education towards cultural heritage if we have more resources and support from the Ministry of Education. We would have been working on more sites, on archaeological sites or heritage sites, if we have the support and full resources from the Ministry of Antiquities. So it's more about not direct restrictions, but obstacles towards because we're racing with time, we're racing with an occupier, so we need to act more with a deeper impact and a faster pace.
Thank you so much. We have more and more questions coming in, but we do have a time limit. So unfortunately, I think maybe we'll have to do more of these to have more conversations and keep talking about this. But to conclude, I will request Mrs. Hashmi to please recite a poem by Faisal, which he wrote in support of the Palestinian
Sure.
cause.
Okay. This poem, which is called Filistinion ke liye tarana, which means that it is a tarana means a song, a collective song for the Palestinians. This was written. One good thing about my dad was that he would write the date of whatever. So this was written on the 15th of June, 1983. It doesn't say the place, but I'm not sure where he would be at that time, but he was definitely not in Pakistan. So he wrote this maybe somewhere else, wherever he was. We can go and look it up. So this is, because my father was a scholar of Arabic as well. So there are a couple of verses in Arabic, which I will not even attempt. So people who can read it can see it from the other side, right side, but I will just read it. The Urdu part of it, I tried to read the Arabic yesterday, but instead of making a fool of myself, I think I'll just read the Urdu. So it says, हम जीतेंगे, हक्का हम एक दिन जीतेंगे, बिल आखिर एक दिन जीतेंगे, क्या खौफ जलगार अदा है सीना से पर हर गाजी का, डर काहे का, हम जीतेंगे, हक्का हम एक दिन जीतेंगे, है जन्नत अपने पांव तले. Now this is for the women. है जन्नत अपने पांव तले और साया रहमत सर पर है, फिर डर काहे का, हम जीतेंगे, हक्का हम एक दिन जीतेंगे. So one verse is for the soldiers and one verse is for the women.
Don't know what to say.
It has been recorded by the Faiz Foundation in Lahore as a chorus, and it sounds absolutely forceful and dynamic. Hum jeetenge, hum jeetenge. And then when you have about 5-7 voices singing, it really sounds
Very
true.
powerful.
And this is what Shata said. You have to live on hope. I know 70 years, 80 years, whatever years, but you have to live on hope. There is no other way. There's no other way.
Wonderful. On that note, I think it's time. We have run out of time, although we can go on and on. Thank you so much once again to all of you, to all our viewers that have joined in and have sent so many questions. I would just very quickly like to say, if you would like to get in touch with RIWAQ or support their work, there are details in the description of this video. So please do go ahead and click on those and learn more about the organization.
I need 1 second. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It was not Arabic, it was Farsi, because my father was also a Farsi scholar. Sorry.
Somebody, yes, commented on that.
No, sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Mrs. Hashmi. Another thing that I wanted to mention, of course, you can reach out to us as well. I wanted to very quickly tell you about Cultural Advocacy Lab. We are a collective of individuals interested in working with communities on issues of cultural rights and heritage. If you'd like to reach out to us for more information and also more information on how we could possibly support RIWAQ's work together, please reach out to us. Our email address is culturaladvocacylab@gmail.com, also in the description of this video link. Thank you once again, all of you, for joining, to all our viewers, and good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.